Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time. This time on the Kindness Project, Marathon Madness, Brainy Nuggets, and we have part one of our interview with Ruth Hughes. Welcome, my friends, to
the Kindness Project.
I almost said Poetry Corner there, but that's my little project that I run with Sophie. Welcome, my friends, to the Kindness Project. I am joined by member number one of the Chicken Nuggets fan club. It's Charlotte Dames.
And I'm joined by a man who'd walk 500 miles. Well, no, not really. He'd run 26. It's Chris Dames.
Oh, you know what, Charlotte? My legs are absolutely killing me. I did a thing on Saturday at my gym called Fit or Quit. I felt like quitting. And I ran 14 miles this morning. And
why?
What? Because I am training for the marathon.
26 miles.
26 miles, and I am getting ready. But that's not been my worst training experience so far. Let me tell you about that. It was a 12-miler the other night. It was dark, it was raining, and it was windy. And I got to 10 miles and looked at my phone, and the Uber app was shining brightly. I was like, should I press it? And I didn't in the end. I managed to get the last 2 miles home, but never before have I wanted to get an Uber so much in my life. I've been slightly intoxicated in London and known I had to get an Uber app. I wanted to get an Uber more 10 miles into that 12-mile run than being stuck in London at 2 a.m. So
but you got it.
I did. I got there. So running is going well. 14 miles down. I'm going to try for a 17, 18 miler on Sunday. Ready for my London Marathon at the end of April. So it should be good fun. What's going on in your world?
Mocks,
are they going?
Yeah, they're making fun of me.
Yeah, they are. They're mocking you. Talk to me about chicken nuggets, because I'm not a fan.
I'm not either.
What? Hold on. You just said before we started this podcast, you whispered into the mic, I love chicken nuggets.
Because I was going to say something and I forgot. And whenever my mind goes blank, for some reason, the first thing that comes to mind is always chicken nuggets. And I would pick any other food over chicken nuggets. Well, maybe not that weird mush we had in Japan that was kind of...
What weird mush? You're talking about sea urchin.
Oh,
I would eat dog poo over sea urchin. That's how bad
so
it
would
was.
I, yeah.
Was you?
No.
I was joking.
I was thinking more dog food, but
Yeah. But sea urchin isn't a pleasant experience.
Yeah, the chicken nuggets is one of those things that we just don't have it that much. I'm not that fond of it. But sometimes it's just one of those random brain things, you know.
But you know what? The problem is with chicken nuggets, and to a certain extent, turkey twizzlers, is it's all of the stuff that...
What the heck is a turkey twizzler?
Well, you don't know what a turkey twizzler is?
Oh, I don't know what a turkey twizzler is.
Basically, it's a chicken nugget full of turkey.
Oh.
And Jamie Oliver, the chef, went on a bit of a campaign a few years ago to ban turkey twizzlers because they used to serve them in schools.
Oh, I remember that. And he showed all the kids what went into them and they went, I'd still eat them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's the matter with that? Mashed up brains? Yeah, bang that in there. But yeah, I mean, basically, turkey twizzlers, chicken nuggets, and to a certain extent, burgers... depending on where they are produced,
what they're made of,
do contain rubbish bits of like unusual and the bits of an animal that can't be used conventionally in a steak or ribs or whatever. So yeah. It's not normally the
if
good
you wouldn't
stuff.
eat if you can't eat a human part of it, you can't eat the animal part. That's what I say. So you can't eat the brain because there's toxins in there.
What bit of a human would you eat, just out of interest?
There's whole parts of the human body that are safe to eat, and parts that aren't. So the brain.
Sorry, when did you go to cannibal school? And me not realised. When did you do this course in cannibalism? Go on, tell me, what parts of the human body are safe to eat?
The thighs.
The thighs?
The arse.
So, Where have you learnt this? Thighs and arse are alright to eat on a human.
But not the brain.
Oh, no.
It contains
Not the brain.
no.
Just give me a bit of bum.
There is stuff in the brain
Right.
that can degenerate cells in your own brain. Don't do it.
No, because you would catch
Deadly.
it. If you ate a brain, you would catch it. But you can eat sheep's brain because that's a delicacy in countries.
Yeah, you can eat sheep's brain.
Yeah.
But don't eat human brain because...
Going back to this cannibalism education, where did you learn this?
Okay, so I was writing a story about a cannibal, and I did some research because I had a real obsession with the show Hannibal, and I was like, right, I'm going to write my own cannibal. So I was like, I'll do some research on what parts of the human body are safe to eat.
Right. And what, apart from the thighs and the butt, what else can you have?
I'm pretty sure the ribs. It's the most conventional meats you can.
Ribs?
Not the actual ribs themselves, but the meat that kind of
Surrounds the
clings to
ribs.
them. I think it's the most conventional parts from animal meats, so
Heart, kidney, liver you can eat.
but you can't eat the brain.
Okay.
And I wouldn't recommend the pancreas. It's
But
full
there
of
is
hormones.
a movie that was, I think, the third Hannibal Lecter movie
I haven't seen it
where
yet.
he did eat a brain.
That's why he's psycho.
I don't think he was psycho after he ate the
Well,
brain.
it probably made it worse.
I think he was a little bit psycho before he ate. That's why he's a cannibal. Because you don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm just going to have a little bit of brain. Suddenly I'm a cannibal. You've got to be a cannibal to eat the brain in the first place.
Did you know that being a cannibal is actually bad for your health?
Yeah. Really?
Not
Really?
just, it's not safe to eat any part of your human body, but being a cannibal is just generally bad for your health.
I like the way you went to bad for your health as opposed to illegal and ethically very dubious and one of the worst things you could do in the world.
Do you remember
Oh, you
that
know
time I
what?
tried
Watch
to
it. It's not like drinking beer, is it? It's like, yeah.
See,
Do you
no,
know
do you-
cannibalism?
Yeah, but
The only thing you need to worry about, bad for your health.
see, the thing is, I've progressed from trying to write that short story to trying to write that audio drama thingy called Cooking with Cannibals.
All right.
And it was like, I was trying to make up all these recipes about how you'd cook with human meat. And
She's talking about fiction she's writing,
yes,
by the way.
yes.
But yeah, okay, so we've decided that we're not going to be cannibals, not because it's illegal or ethically incorrect. It's bad for your health.
Don't do it, guys.
Don't do it, guys. It's bad for your health. Can you... I've just realised I haven't got a question in the podcast.
What things are bad for your health that you guys love?
Oh, amazing. High five.
Me, cannibalism.
What do you absolutely adore that's bad for your health? Cannibalism not included.
Mint humbugs.
We're having that. Is it?
Ginger nuts.
I mean, for me,
Hobnobs.
I am quite a healthy person nowadays. I still like a drink or three, and I still enjoy it. So I've got a sweet tooth, so a sweet tooth always gets me. So I think chocolate and alcohol are my two vices.
I am a bread person. Like, bread galore. Bread for breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not dinner. But this morning I had toast, and at lunch I had a sandwich, which is my typical.
But you know what? I've cut out bread from my diet, and I'm genuinely, I'm not missing it at all. I am not missing bread at all. I've replaced it with human brains, which might be an issue, but
Oh no, wrong part.
it's bad for your health, clearly.
Bad for your health.
Yeah.
You want to take something nice and juicy like the liver.
Lovely. Where can people tell us what they love that's bad for their health?
Facebook, at the Kindness Project, or at Ola Kindness on Twitter. The email is ola@thekindnessproject.co.uk. And you can just Google us because we come up right at the top because we're big now apparently.
Yeah, we're actually popular. A kindness podcast that talks about cannibalism for some reason.
Don't you just love it?
Yeah. maybe our massively popular Spotify review might be might not apply.
They
anymore.
signed up for this shambolic nonsense.
Anyway, let us know what you love that's bad for your health, or not particularly good for you, but you're going to indulge anyway. And
Do it anyway.
Crack on with the show. So, I'm going to share some fun facts today. So it's Happy News, Fun Facts edition. Did you know that male bottlenose dolphins have names for each other? I like to think one dolphin is called Alan, another is called Steve, and another is called the Lodipus. Like there's one rogue dolphin with a really weird name that just is excluded by the group. Poseidon or something like that. One's called Alan, one's called Steve, and one's called Poseidon.
It's like that bit in the game, Undertale, and it's like, "Hoi, this is my best friend Temmie," and then they're all called Temmie, and it's like, "Hoi, I'm Temmie, and this is my best friend," and the next one along goes, "Hi, I'm Bob."
Yeah.
And there's like 5 of them in the line. They're all called Temmie, and then there's just Bob at the end.
But I wonder. I'd like to know what the literal. I mean, clearly there's no translation because it will be like. Yeah. And here's another fun fact for good news section of the podcast. Did you know that scientists discovered a new kind of spider that looks like the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter, and they named it Europvixia Gryffindori. Now that is amazing, but that happens quite a lot because like people find stars in the sky and will name them after their favourite scientist or
themselves sometimes if they're that self-centred.
I wonder if there's a I named that star Christopher Dames.
Because think about it, that what was his face, Brezhnev, the Cold War, and all the others were like, yeah, we'll name it something different, other than like Truman and Marshall, but and they were like, yeah, we'll name it something different, and he was like, you know what, this is the Brezhnev doctrine, we're gonna keep you lots in.
Yeah.
No.
But you know what, right? I'm reading about Chernobyl at the minute because for some bizarre reason your granddad likes to go to the most depressing places in the world.
Radiation, guys.
So we are off to Kiev, which looks lovely, but also to Pripyat and Chernobyl, which it will be interesting, I'm sure. So I'm reading a book on Chernobyl at the minute, and you know what? It's interesting when you look at Russian and Soviet culture and the fact that behind the Iron Curtain, they didn't like to admit mistakes. And there was actually nuclear accidents that happened before Chernobyl that nobody knew about. And they just didn't learn from their mistakes because they didn't want to admit they'd made them because it was against their culture. Now, I know we live in a different culture. But it's interesting how...
Yeah, you know they weren't willing to make mistakes, so they weren't willing to admit their leaders would make mistakes, because I was sitting my Cold War exam today, and something I remembered was that they had a leader, Khrushchev, and he pulled missiles out of Cuba, the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that, and because he made the mistake of negotiating with the US, he got voted out of power. Because they all saw him as weak because he made a mistake. Yeah. He made one mistake and they all saw him as weak.
Yeah, but interestingly, and I think we live in a community where we live in a society at the minute where we're moving towards a more dominance of a strongman leader. I don't think that's good long term for the world. I think we need.
I was going to say for the mental health of men, but
sure. No, that's true. But we need more people to just turn around and go, we don't always get it right. We're going to ask for help.
But don't press the button to a nuclear missile and go whoopsies.
Whoopsies. Is that the reaction you'd expect?
No, this is the reaction I don't want.
Whoopsie. Let me share one other piece of good news for you. More UK schools are embracing mindfulness. An increasing number of UK schools, particularly those in deprived areas, are finding that teaching mindfulness is helping their children, and in some cases workshops have been run for the parents too, to cope with the pressures and stresses of their lives, both at home and at school. There are often substantial strains on children in such areas: gangs, gun crime and other violence, concerns over parental unemployment and financial hardship, and cases involving abuse, homelessness and multiple foster carers. Mindfulness can and has been proven to help children deal with the issues they face and improve both their mental health and their academic performance. I like that.
Yeah, so do I.
Teaching kids a wide range of life skills, I think, is super important.
Definitely.
And mindfulness is definitely one of them. So well done, UK schools.
Woo.
Shall we get on with the show?
Let's get to it.
So this week we've got the first part of what's going to be a 3-part interview with a lady called Ruth Hughes. Now, Ruth is amazing because she's a coach and she talks about effectively being kinder to yourself. So during a quite an in-depth conversation, we included sort of topics like avoiding comparisons, only worrying about what we can control, forgiving yourself when making mistakes, ignoring the noise, protecting your own mental health, having my favourite subject, Charlotte, a growth mindset. Don't say it like that. Growth mindset. That was almost as bad as your happy news.
Times I hear the phrase growth mindset.
It's important. It's an important phrase.
It's getting old.
And asking for help when you need it. So Ruth talks about all those subjects, many of which she talks about in the first part of this interview. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Hi Ruth, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Chris.
Amazing.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to see you as well. I mean, nice to meet you. We have spoken on the phone
We've spoken
a couple
on
of
the
times,
phone,
haven't we?
but first time I've actually met you.
Yeah, it's good. And I've got to apologise. I'm sporting a bit of a facial hair thing today.
I had noticed.
And the reason being is because one of my pleasures in life is a really good Turkish shave, you know, and I sort of feel a bit disingenuous if I don't grow it out a bit before
so you've been
going.
saving up.
I have been saving up my beard hair to have a really good Turkish shave, so that's the reason.
It's all right.
Oh, thank you. I didn't. Beards on me never last long because I always get a bit itchy, and always annoys me a bit. And lemon curd for breakfast as well. Will you tell me about that?
Well, just raided my sister's cupboard.
Okay.
Not usual for lemon curd, but I was in a hurry and I was up at 6 a.m. because I had to catch the tube across London. So
where's your sister live? She lives west.
Between Earlsfield and Southfield.
Okay. Because you had a lecture this morning, right?
Because I had a lecture this morning.
How'd it go?
Yeah, really good. Great bunch of students at UEL and very interested in. We were doing psychological interventions and scales this morning, looking at positive psychology and some of Dr. Ilona Bonnywell's work on how different interventions can improve the quality of your life.
And are these coaching interventions typically?
No, they can be absolutely anything. So active interventions might include dance or walking or aerobic exercise or mindfulness interventions or kindness or gratitude or forgiveness interventions, whole range of different things.
Interesting, really good. So we've spoken a little bit about your lecture, but before our audience understand a bit more about that, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, when I saw that I thought, how am I going to answer that particular question, because there's always more than one you in you, isn't there? So I would say on a personal level, I'm an intensely curious human being. And I'm somebody who's lived in a lot of different places and who's had quite a lot of different jobs. So the answer is quite complicated, but at the moment I'm the director of a company called Curious Human that works with people undergoing cultural transition. And that's a whole variety of different things. But who I am as a person, I would say, is a very curious person who's interested in how people belong to where they are.
And where do you think that curiosity comes from?
I think it was both something I was born with and something that I've grown.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that's a virtuous circle. So the more interesting you find life, the more interesting life becomes.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And specifically in the area of understanding how people and cultures and people adapt to different situations. How did you get interested in that specific area?
I'm from a culturally mixed background. My mum's half Danish and half Norwegian. She grew up in Africa. My dad was of Portuguese Jewish stock. And all of my family live in different places in the world. So I've got a lot of family in Australia, America, Scandinavia, Africa, and so I never felt particularly English. I didn't really know what that meant, although culturally, of course, I am. And I felt very British, and I really felt really European.
Okay.
And then, so Brexit's been an interesting one for me. But I suppose just that that got me started. And then I my first job when I left school was in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And then I went to university and studied English literature, and then I ended up teaching in Zambia for 11 years.
Okay.
And I underwent culture shock myself at the time, but I didn't know that was what it was or what it was called.
Sure.
And when I came back, I worked in schools, particularly supporting international students as they acculturated. So my own experience was really helpful in trying to understand what they did. And then I did the boarding management course with Roehampton University and the Boarding Schools Association. And I studied culture shock, and I looked at how people adjusted.
So I'm just again curious, how important is identity to you, and how do you think that's manifested in how people think about their own lives?
I think identity is really crucial, but I did some research. At the end of this story, I ended up doing a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, where again I did research into culture shock.
Okay.
And so, as positive psychology looks at, rather than the mainstream field of psychology, which looks at what's wrong with people and how to put it right, positive psychology looks at what's right with people and studies those elements of flourishing, and then seeks to apply evidence-based interventions to help everybody flourish more. Nobody had really done that with culture shock. In fact, if you look at the research on culture shock, it suggests that moving countries or cultures within countries is not just international. So I work also with students who come from non-traditional academic backgrounds, and they're moving into an academic higher education. Exactly, and that can be just as much of a culture shock. I also work with leaders in companies who have moved from middle management to senior leadership, and that in itself is a culture shock. But the research that I was doing on international culture shock suggests that it's very damaging in terms of its impact on your identity, and traditionally people have various ways of coping with that, including just sticking to their own cultural boundaries, in terms of expat communities that don't mix or integrate, or completely assimilating and turning against their own culture, or learning to acculturate so that you have a little bit of both. And so I was really interested in how that worked. And then the research that I've done was fascinating, because I came across people like Jabrowski, who had a personality disintegration theory. It's never really very popular. I think it sounds a bit scary, doesn't it? Personality disintegration.
Tell me a little bit about that.
His theory was that in times of adversity, your sense of self shattered. And then had to be rebuilt. So I found that was true, not so much in terms of personality, but in terms of identity. So I think there are aspects of identity that are, if not constant, at least very stable.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that the work that I do, I really like strengths work.
Okay.
So I building on the work of Niemiec and Pedersen and Martin Seligman with the Virtues in Action character strength survey.
Okay.
And that's free.
Yeah,
So anybody can access that survey and take it. But it looks at there's a series of 24 virtues that are common to all people, that everybody has all of, but
in different gradation.
In different gradations.
So give me an example of some of those.
So my top 5: love of learning, curiosity, creativity, perspective, and love.
Okay.
And if you activate your top strengths, if you either unconsciously or consciously use them and utilise them in your daily life, you feel more alive, you feel more energised.
Yeah.
There are other strength surveys, some of which you pay for, but they work on that principle that the things that are core to making you can be activated and can create more meaning in your life.
Yeah, it's about understanding your values, isn't it? Understanding what's important to you in your life.
But when I say that, I don't personally believe that we have fixed identities, because to me, identity is negotiated and social. We're social creatures, and the environment that we're in. There's a fantastic book by Kwame Appiah called The Lies That Bind, where he talks about our different kinds of identities, and that they're negotiated. So you can have the identity that you feel you are, but it isn't necessarily accepted in the environment that you're in, and so and I think that's really apparent in the case of culture shock, where people go somewhere else. A lot of their map of the world, their way of understanding life
changes, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's not that it's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like, you've got different kinds of maps. You have an ordnance survey and you have a road map. And if you use the wrong kind of map in the wrong kind of circumstance, if it doesn't fit, it feels like the world isn't working properly.
Yeah, sure.
But it's actually just our interpretation of the world that comes up against other realities.
And are some people just naturally inclined to be more adaptable, so to change their map to suit their circumstance, or do you think that's a learned process?
I'm sure that there is something to do with a predisposition, but I do think a lot of it is strategic and learned, because we can get better of it.
Sure.
And also, I'm a great fan of Carol Dweck.
Yeah, well, so am I, and we're going to talk a bit about growth mindset later on, and it's interesting. And when you did your research on culture shock, did you find that it was easier to adapt based on youth? Was there an age differential?
Actually, it didn't come out like that.
Okay.
Because a number of the people that I spoke to had moved several times, and I think that's what I was saying about it being a learnt experience.
Yeah.
I think if you move cultures for the first time when you're older, it probably is harder because you're more set in your ways, and I think young people have got perhaps less rigid maps. The maps that we adopt are based on strategy. They're the things that have been really effective, and if you've used one way of looking at things for a really long time
in a specific environment that
in
they're
a specific
used to.
environment, and then you've done that for many years, it is going to probably be harder. But a lot of people that I know, as well as people that I work with and as people that I interviewed, if you've changed cultures quite often, it doesn't make it easier. But you are quicker to adapt. And one of the things that came out from people who grew and who felt that it was beneficial to them to have changed cultures was that when something went wrong, when they got stuck and when things weren't working, they were more open to the possibility that there was a way for it to get right, and that they just hadn't found it yet. And so they had that predisposition which had been learnt.
So learned experience because they've gone through that transition process in the past.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I can give you an example, a
Please.
really silly example, that her words, not mine, of somebody who'd moved to America and was trying to operate an ATM machine. And apparently I didn't know this, I haven't used an ATM machine in America, but apparently they don't work in the same way as the UK. In fact, I've forgotten how she told me it did work, but basically she'd put her card in and she was trying to input the number and get the money out in the same way, and it just wouldn't work.
Okay.
And when she approached the bank teller, the person who came just obviously thought that she was stupid and couldn't understand that she couldn't understand.
Gotcha.
And so she felt very humiliated and very upset, and disproportionately upset, and ended up crying in the bank because nobody would show her how to work the ATM machine, and they were all treating her as if she was stupid. And eventually someone did come and help her, but she just said now if she went to another country and something didn't work, she would be calmer, because her assumption would be that it wasn't her and it wasn't that the machine had broken. It was that there was some knowledge that she hadn't yet got, and somebody would be along to help her at some point.
Okay.
So she's got a much more sort of...
Yeah. I mean, that taps into resilience, right?
Yeah,
You're going through those
definitely.
challenging times in a different culture and getting used to that element of saying, well, look, we're never going to get to a point where it's, I'm not going to die from this. I'm not going to, this isn't going to be fatal, or I'm feeling fatalistic. And sometimes you need to go through some of those challenges to learn from the experience.
Or even grow from a second wave positive psychology. There's a great deal of research happening now in adversarial growth. Jabrowski, and he basically said, in order to grow as a person, you have to go through adversity. But certainly we know that in adverse situations, some people really do grow and flourish more than they feel than they would have done had life continued on a more even-keeled contingent.
And it's interesting because one of the things that I'm writing about at the minute is in the book that I'm writing to go with the podcast is the benefit of making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. Do you think as humans we need to make mistakes to learn from them?
I think it's very difficult to learn if you don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
And when I was a teacher, I used to say quite often that especially articulating a mistake is a gift to the class.
Yeah.
Because we all make mistakes to learn, and we have to, I think one of the
So
things...
the teacher admitting they'd made a mistake?
Well, I think that's part of it,
Okay.
actually. But yeah, absolutely. I think this desire that we have to be infallible and perfect is really damaging to everybody.
I think it's damaging to society as well, because it's unrealistic, isn't it?
Hugely.
Yeah.
But children are very frightened. Oh, well, not just children. People are very frightened of being wrong and being judged in front of other people.
It's funny. Part of the reason that I do this podcast is so I can hopefully be a good dad and role model. And I've got in the interest of sharing, I've got a favourite story at the minute where I made a absolutely ridiculous mistake. Did I tell you about this the other day when we spoke on the phone? I don't think I did.
I don't think so.
So my dad's 72, and he every year we what we try and do is carve out time to spend together every year. So we book a holiday, and this year we went to Gibraltar. Which is quite an interesting place because it is like the UK just compartmentalised in Spain. There's an M&S on the high street and stuff like that. So typically I book it and let my dad know, and we arrived at the airport and got in a taxi to go to the hotel. The hotel was called the Hotel Gibraltar, and got in the taxi, and the taxi driver said, I really can't take you to that hotel. And I said, well, why not? It's 10 o'clock at night. How am I going to get there? Why can't you take us to this hotel? He said, that hotel's not in Gibraltar. It's in Spain. And it was over the border. So as you know, because you've been, the border is literally 5 minutes away. I'd looked at it on Google Maps, assuming that the Hotel Gibraltar was in Gibraltar, and we had to take our passports out every day. So my 72-year-old dad wasn't particularly happy about having to do it, but we realised after a day that it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's just one of those mistakes that you make that can turn into a bit of a funny story, and you can just say, look, actually, you've got to sometimes live those experiences to turn around and go, you know what, it's quite good fun. So in the interest of sharing, what mistake, what funny story have you got on a mistake you've made?
Well, I've made loads of mistakes, but what you've just prompted in me is one of the things that's helped me get over those mistakes.
Okay.
So I came across this on the Psychology Today blog. It was put there by a guy called Greg Enriques, who's fantastic. And it's the calm way of dealing with mistakes that you make. So C for curious, A for accepting, L for loving and kind to yourself, and M motivated to learn.
Okay, interesting.
So I was somebody who would be really anxious about getting things right and being on time particularly, and I've got a relatively new business. It's been going just over a year, and one of the things that I do workshops on well-being as an associate with another company, Worth It Education, and I had a booking at a school in a large city not far from where I lived, and so I'd put it. I always have to be early because of contingency and traffic, and I'd put in the name and the address of the school, and it was a C of E school, so it was blah-de-blah C of E school, and I turned up 40 minutes early and said, "Hi, I'm here to deliver."
Ready to go. Yeah.
Ready to go, and they went, "Who? What?"
Oh, no.
And I had one of those, I was thinking, have I got the wrong day? Have I got the... And then I said, there isn't another school of the same name. It was one of 3 schools of the same name in the same city. Okay. One of which was 15 minutes from that school, and one of which was half an hour drive, and this was now approaching rush hour because it was a twilight session. No. And you guess which one I was in. So
it was the half-hour one, wasn't it?
It was the half-hour one. So I phoned the school and I said I was coming, and I was thinking, before I'd done the positive psychology and lots of other techniques, and I thought, I'm going to practice this curious. So why did I get it wrong? I didn't put the postcode in for a start, but I had made an assumption, like you'd made an assumption about Hotel Gibraltar, that there was only one school of that name in one city, and then I thought, okay, accepting it's happened, I'm here, there's nothing I can do about it, so I can only get there as fast as I can. Loving towards myself, that's an interesting one, because you've got your metacognitive observer, that inner voice, that just inner critic to tell, oh, you're so stupid, you should have checked, but actually, if you were talking to a good friend of yours or to your daughter,
what would you say?
What would you say? Would you call them the names that you call yourself in your head, or would you say, do you know what? Yeah, you should have checked, but anyone could have made that mistake. It's a mistake that's common to humanity. It isn't an idiotic thing to have done. You could, have done something else, but you're not a bad person because of it, and you're doing what you can to put it right, which leads on to that M, which is motivated to learn. I thought, will I ever make that mistake again? Not a chance.
I'm definitely. It was funny because on the long 15-minute walk to the hotel, my dad said, "Didn't you check the address?" And the fact that I'd Google mapped it and I knew it was a 15-minute walk. And it was called the Hotel Gibraltar in a website that was, I googled hotels in Gibraltar, I assume. But again, you just learn from that.
It's right. It's that map of the world that just needed adjusting to take that in. And it's the kind of mistake that people make culturally all the time when they're in a different environment.
You know what? I think that I've got a bit of an optimistic bent as well. And it wasn't. We got to the hotel and we had a beer, and my two optimistic perspectives on it was, number one, that's another story for the bank of stuff that's gone wrong, and I can just enjoy telling later. And then number two was will never cross the border as much in one holiday ever again.
Yeah,
so you can sort of, I suppose you can skew it in whatever perspective
and
you want.
actually, when I arrived, I was only about 5 minutes late when I came in. I felt really proud of myself for being calm.
Yeah.
You know, whereas before I perhaps wouldn't have been. But secondly, it made a great story when I'm talking to teachers about well-being.
Yeah.
About something that I've literally just lived and practically applied myself. So
and it goes back to that sort of living the resilience thing, doesn't it? And saying, look, I've coped with it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big things that's interesting, because you're in a position where you've got to live that. You know, I think when you're having conversations with people, the fact that you are not perfect, none of us are, and you can actually communicate that well, I think goes a long way with having conversations with people. So you mentioned you've started a new business, The Curious Human, which is an amazing name for a business.
Thank you.
I've got a bit of business name envy now. Tell us about the work you do there.
Okay, so the work that I do most of is training and speaking at conferences.
Okay.
I do a lot of talking at international conferences. I work with English UK, for example, are the membership company for language schools in England. And I've spoken at a couple of their conferences, Student Experience Conference and their academic conference. And then on the basis of that, quite a lot of the schools will book me to go and work in the schools with them, working on improving well-being. So it's really important to me. I was a teacher for many years myself. I work in other kinds of schools as well. I also work with universities, with students transitioning into higher education, and with students particularly from non-traditional academic backgrounds. But when I was a teacher, there was more and more concern about young people's mental health. And I'd done some mental health training. I'm a mental health first aider. I've done various bits of training. But I think becoming aware of what can go wrong without having the professional background to know quite what to do about it is potentially dangerous.
Okay.
We get what we look for. So if you're particularly alert and you're on the lookout for anxiety, for depression, for eating disorders, you're going to see an awful lot of it. There can be a tendency on the part of teachers to either identify students and then move them to the counsellor and then think, oh, that's dealt with, I don't have to get involved anymore. Or to try to rescue or save in a way that you're not actually properly qualified to do.
Sure.
Or just to not know what to do and then feel paralysed. What I loved about positive psychology when I found out about it was it gives you really practical strategies for raising everybody's well-being.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the meme on Facebook about equality versus equity.
No.
So you've got three little people by a wall, and the littlest one can't see over, and the middle one can't see over, and the big one can. And then they're all given one box, and the tallest one and the middle one can now see over, but the littlest one still can't because the box isn't big enough. So that's equality. They've all got the same stool to stand on. And then the next picture along, you've got the little one standing on two boxes.
Okay.
And the middle one standing on one box, and then the tall one doesn't need a box to see over the wall, and that's equity.
Yeah.
So you're giving support.
But I suppose the challenge you've got potentially with taking a problem-focused approach with mental health first aid is you're helping the person who can't see over the wall at all, and the people in the middle aren't given the tools and techniques to potentially do it, right?
So the third picture is the wall's been removed and there's a link chain fence, so all of them can see through it without needing that special.
Okay.
And to me, that's what positive psychology does. It raises everybody's mental health. And particularly if you're looking at people in transition, their mental health is more vulnerable. It's something teachers can do, not just teachers, accommodation providers, managers in the workplace. And it's relatively simple to start to make incremental gains. It's not simple to change a whole culture. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes the people in charge to do it themselves.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because you need cultural change within the organisations you work in, right?
Yeah.
And is it the work you do? Is it primarily with students or supporting teachers? How does it split?
I would say about a third with students and about 2/3 with teachers, and then I still do one-to-one coaching.
Okay.
So with individuals who are themselves undergoing change, I work with some senior leaders who are moving. In fact, I'm teaching and coaching across 3 time zones at the moment.
Okay.
So I'm working with some leaders of charities in Africa. So luckily we've got Zoom. I can work anywhere. But people who are themselves, who have a particular wish to understand what's happening to them, people who are struggling with change. There's an awful lot that can be done in terms of understanding the trajectory. I don't know if you've come across Gullahorn and Gullahorn's culture shock W curve.
I haven't, no.
Okay, so there is some argument against it, but as well, like everything in academia, but essentially it shows that when you go into a new situation, and it was based on international transition, you start off feeling hope and optimism. It's like the honeymoon period. So you've made a choice, you've made a move, it's really exciting, and then things start to wear off. And if it were an international transition, it would be the food's not quite the same as the food at home, the weather's not quite the same. But actually what's happening is whenever you do something new, when you start, you don't know what you don't know. And you start to find that out. Yeah. And because you're learning, you become tired. And also, as humans, we have a familiarity bias. We like what we know. So although we have a novel, we really like novelty and new things, we also miss what's familiar. So all of those things start to combine, and you start to slide down the well-being.
So that was the first part of the interview. What did you think?
Woo-woo!
And more to come from Ruth in the next couple of weeks. Why did you just start singing the Dora the Explorer theme, Jen?
I don't know. Okay, because in the exam earlier, I double-checked my paper, answered all my questions, and I was like, what can I do to pass this
Sing Dora
15 minutes I have left? So I went through my brain kind of databank thingy, and I picked out all the themes.
Was you in your mind palace?
Yes.
Is that what you were doing?
And I was picking out all the theme songs I know. So out comes the Digimon theme, Pokemon, Captain Underpants, the other 3 Digimon themes I know.
How many Digimon themes are there?
1 for every season, so 10.
Okay.
But I only know 4 of them. So I know 4 of the Pokemon ones.
Did the theme tune for Yokai Watch get a look in?
It did. So did The Simpsons.
Right. How about the theme tune from Fraggle Rock?
Yes.
Okay.
And Dora the Explorer. And they were all featured like a playlist in my mind.
How about the A-Team?
Don't know it.
Oh, right. Before we crack on with the show, listeners, we need to get a bit of A-Team into our lives. So just for Charlotte's benefit, but also so that our more middle-aged... I've got Ed Sheeran come up.
Only A-Team I know, isn't it?
For our middle-aged listeners, here's a bit of a blast from the past. Here's a little bit of the A-Team theme tune.
Even in the dark with improved night sight.
Here we go. So it starts off strong with some drums.
I do know this. It hasn't got any words.
No, it has.
I don't know them.
It's definitely got words because it starts off about the fact that they've
the phrase "Thunderbirds I'll go" got to look in somewhere.
Right. So let me see if we can get the old. Let's see if we can get.
In 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security.
That's Suicide Squad, isn't it?
It's a bit like
Still
Suicide
wanted
Squad.
by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
The A-Team. It's amazing. It's a great theme tune.
Oh no, he's a fanboy.
Oh, I love the A-Team. When I was like 10, it was on Saturday afternoons. Absolutely loved it. We're not here to talk about the A-Team, though. We are here to talk about last week's question of the podcast, which was, what musical instrument can you play? Or what musical instrument would you love to be amazing at? And we had quite a lot of comments. Mikey Lambo said, I slap the bass, can play guitar averagely, and could do a little bit on those little drum machine mixer things, and a wee bit of mandolin. Ooh. Or when I just bought an electric double bass to learn. Amanda Smead said, drums I would like to play, piano, guitar I like to hear. Tamsin Kane said, I can play the clarinet and sax. I love to be great at the piano like my dad, and I always wanted to play the oboe when I was younger. Nick Ramsden says he can play the drums. Carol Staunton said, I've had a go at a few things. My weapons of choice are the recorder, classic, the tenor.
The obligatory primary school instrument.
Oh, everybody's played the recorder.
Everyone's played the recorder.
And the E-flat horn. I had to go with the violin, but wasn't so good. Clearly, Carol's better at the blowy ones than the swipey ones.
Yeah.
Caroline Thompson said, I can play the flute, although I'm a bit rusty now. Would love to play the oboe or harp. John Cook said he can play a little piano keyboard. How about big piano keyboard? Do you reckon he's not as good at that?
Do you imagine he's got a little one? He just plays it with two fingers.
Tiny little piano. I'd love to be better. Get a bigger keyboard. Alan Bowley said, I can play guitar but haven't played for a while. Does that count? Can be if you want to. Michelle Hughes Gage said, I like singing. I can't play any instrument, not even the spoons. I love the spoons.
I'd love you to teach me how to play the steel drums.
Well, what am I? One day we will get us steel drums, put it in the garage at the back, and we'll have a little band, start a little band. But before we do that, I'm going to, at some point over the next few weeks, play the A-Team theme tune on the spoons for the podcast. But Michelle will pick the piano. She learnt it as a child but didn't pursue it. And Andy Fano said, I can play the drums but haven't been behind a kit in a while. Now, when I first read that, I thought it said hadn't been behind a kilt in a while.
Bagpipes.
Which means nobody wants to play the bagpipes. Nobody wants to play the bagpipes. And then we had some from Twitter as well. So Twitter... at DJ Mena Kek UK said, I like the saxophone. Kate Shaw said, I play viola, flute and piano. I'd love to be able to play the oboe and cello. David Brooks said, bass guitar and saxophone, but would love to be an amazing drummer. Eve Keith said, I always wanted to play the guitar, but after an embarrassing term of lessons, the teacher gave up on me.
Oh no.
David Brooks said, you should have tried the bass to Eve, much easier. And Alistair Cunningham said, I'm going to learn to do the drums when I retire. Heidi Ball said, she used to play the double bass at school and would love to start music lessons with the violin and recorder. And that, my friends, was the end of that. That was all of our musical instrument suggestions.
Our listeners are so talented.
They are amazing listeners. Thank you very much. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next week for more of the Kindness Project.
Bye.